Hello there and welcome to this webinar. Now this webinar is specifically focused on the RPL project that you are going to do as part of the assessment cluster. Now you'll find this RPL project around page 208 in your assessment booklet here. Now the premise of this RPL project is to give you an experience of actually creating an RPL kit based on a unit of competency. Okay, so the purpose of this webinar is to walk you through the steps and the stages of how to do that and give you some guidance on exactly what to be doing at the different stages, okay? And ultimately, if you have any questions at all, feel free to pause the webinar, rewind, rewatch sections. Otherwise, feel free to ask questions at your face-to-face workshop or your virtual online workshop, or email the trainer directly and they'll be happy to answer any questions that you've got. However, this RPL project is not too intense and you should find it pretty straightforward. But we're going to go through it step by step and make sure that you understand all the fundamental components. Now, first of all, the first thing I'll say about RPL is that essentially it is assessment only, okay? So it would be as if somebody was coming to you in your workplace and wanted to be recognised for prior experience and knowledge that they may already have, but they do not need to be trained on it. Okay, so RPL is recognition of prior learning, and we would normally do that by looking at evidence that they provide and sitting down and having an interview with them, and maybe even looking at getting a third-party report that would test, validate, or verify that they do have those skills and knowledge that they are claiming that they have. Okay. Now, RPL, you may also go out to a work site and observe them doing something. That would be certainly part of it as well. All right. But the specific unit that we are looking at creating an RPL kit for is show social and cultural sensitivity. And the idea is, or the scenario is, that you work in a workplace, okay? So let's imagine that you work at an RTO or even your current workplace, and somebody has come to you and they want RPL for the unit show social and cultural sensitivity, okay? So we're going to go through the motions of actually creating the RPL kit and then using the RPL kit with a mock candidate, okay? So let's go through it, all right? So the instructions are basically as you can see there, okay, and I will guide you through it, okay. So first thing that we're going to do is make an RPL assessment plan, okay, and I will help you with each of the sections. So purpose and aims of the assessment is to, so you can write this in if you want, to provide RPL, or to provide the opportunity for RPL for the unit show social and cultural sensitivity to an individual in the workplace and to have their skills recognised. Okay, that's pretty much what it is. Okay, now date assessment due, you can put the date that you're filling this out, that's totally fine. Okay, benchmark competency standard is going to be, what was it? It's going to be SITXCOM002, show social and cultural sensitivity. Okay, so that's what you're going to write in there. Now, the assessment context or place training will occur. You can put in the name of your workplace. So let's imagine that you work maybe as a nurse. Well, you could put in the hospital that you work at. Maybe if you're a childcare worker, you could put in the name of the childcare centre. Let's see, what else could it be? If you are a trainer at an RTO, you could put in the name of the RTO, and you could put in what your RTO actually teaches. Okay, that'd be fine. Target group to be assessed. So this would be the characteristics of the candidate that you are going to be assessing. So for example, let's go back to the fact that you maybe work at a childcare centre, and maybe the target group is, let's call them Mary Smith. Okay, so Mary Smith, she's a childcare teacher or educator, and she's been working at a childcare centre for 2 or 3 years, and she's got good solid language literacy and numeracy skills, and she's got lots of experience dealing with multicultural students or kids, and she wants to be recognised for her ability to show social and cultural sensitivity, whatever it might be. Okay, so you're putting in some characteristics of the colleague or candidate that you are working with and that wants to be recognised for RPL. Okay, so you can be as creative as you want to be in this section. Okay, but we need characteristics of that candidate. Okay, so you definitely want 2 or 3 sentences in there. All right, organisational arrangements for conducting assessment. So maybe the candidate enrolls with your RTO and they provide evidence, and then you organise an interview, and then you have the interview, and then a candidate has further opportunity to gather evidence, and then if they are deemed satisfactory or competent, then a certificate is issued to the candidate. Okay, privacy and confidentiality. Only the candidate will have access to records or to the results, and the evidence provided will be kept in a safe and secure location. Okay, so scrolling down, reasonable adjustments, provision for specialist support. Okay, so maybe the candidate can't actually attend the interview face-to-face, and maybe the interview is done over the telephone. Okay, maybe the candidate has trouble providing evidence, and maybe the evidence must be kept confidential, so maybe some of the details need to be redacted or blacked out or something like that. Okay, but if there is any specialist I guess support required, such as if somebody has LLN challenges, maybe an LLN support may be required. Totally up to you what you put in this section. Okay, and you may even put none required, no issues identified. That's totally fine as well. Okay, identify WHS hazards, including assessed risks and control strategies. Well, in here you could put in things like, let's see, interview area to be inspected for any hazards, then WHS report to be filled out and kept on file. Those kind of things. I mean, pretty much we just need to make sure that all dangers are identified. Okay, so even in there, if there's no dangers, then you can certainly put area for assessment is has been inspected and no issues identified. Okay, now assessment methods. In this case, we are strongly suggesting that you use the assessment methods of the following: interview, portfolio, and third-party report. Okay, so assessment methods, you can put them in as I say them. So assessment methods, the first one is verbal interview. Okay, evidence to be gathered, you could say recording of interview. Okay, next one is portfolio. Okay, evidence to be gathered, you could say documents from current workplace or previous workplace to verify skills and knowledge against standards in the unit. Okay, next one, third-party report. Okay, and in here we could say third-party report signed by current or previous supervisor. Okay, so let's scroll to the next part. Materials and resources required. You could put in unit of competency, benchmark answers, what else? Assessor guide, student handbook, RPL kit, and maybe resume from candidate. Okay, plan, review, and approval process. You could say plan to be approved by current workplace supervisor and RTO manager. Okay, manager approval. You can get your Success Training Academy supervisor to sign that and pop the date, or you can get a classmate to sign it for you. I mean, this is the mock scenario, so not too critical as to who you get to sign that section. Okay, so scrolling down, next thing we're going to do is we're going to map the unit, and we're going to make some decisions as to how we are going to gather this evidence to make sure that the candidate meets the criteria. Okay, So what we're going to do is we're going to read the criteria, and then we're going to make some decisions as to how we would gather that evidence, either via an interview or via asking for evidence from our candidate via a portfolio or a third-party report. Okay, so let's do a couple together. Now, just to refresh your memory, the unit is show social and cultural sensitivity. All right, so let's go with the childcare worker or the childcare educator. Okay, so let's imagine that you work as let's go in a childcare facility, and you have someone that's coming to you wanting to be recognized for that. Okay, so we've got respect customers and colleagues from different social and cultural groups and treat them with respect and sensitivity. So would we test that via doing a verbal interview, gathering evidence, or a third-party report with our candidate? Okay, so respect customers and colleagues from different social and cultural groups and treat them with respect and sensitivity. Well, probably we could do that via a verbal interview and maybe even a third-party report as well. So what we do is put an X in there and an X in there. Okay, so you could do it via ticking the box or putting an X in the box. Either is fine. Okay. Next one, consider social and cultural differences in all verbal and non-verbal communication. Well, probably we do X on that and maybe even X on that. Okay. So just to remind you, verbal Q&A we'd probably use for knowledge items. Portfolio would be any time that the candidate could provide documents to us to prove that they can do these things. And third party would be when we would rely on somebody else verifying that they can do it. Okay, so consider social and cultural differences. Yep, we definitely do that via interview and third party. All right, cool. Let's check out the next one. Respond to others in a non-discriminatory way. Again, we'd probably do that one via a verbal interview and then maybe a third party. Okay. Make attempts to overcome language barriers. Well, we could probably do that via verbal interview and maybe even portfolio and maybe even third party. Okay. So if it was third portfolio, maybe it could be done through a resume or a position description, or maybe even reports back and forth between the educator and maybe parents of the child, things like that. Okay. Now, you can pick any context, so it could be maybe it's a nurse in a hospital situation. It is a let's see, what else have we got out there? So it could be someone in a retail environment and they want to be recognized for showing social and cultural sensitivity. That's totally fine. It doesn't necessarily matter what the context is. It could be even a trainer in an RTO. So it could be a plumber trainer, plumbing trainer. It could be a carpentry trainer. It could be maybe they're interacting with students from varied social backgrounds. Okay? So just think about your current work situation, and maybe you've got a colleague that comes to you and says, I want RPL for showing social and cultural sensitivity, and you are good to go. All right. So now let's come down, let's have a look at a couple more. Identify social and cultural issues that may cause conflict or misunderstanding in the workplace. All right, so maybe we could do that via an interview. And what else could we do? Maybe a third party report. Okay. All right, awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of these items and we're going to decide how we're going to assess it. All right, verbal Q&A, portfolio, or third party. Okay. Now, coming down, now we're going to look at the performance evidence. And what we're going to do, first of all, is we're going to label it. All right, so in your book, it's actually not going to have the labels there, PE1, PE2, PE3, PE4, PE5. So what I want you to do is go into this section and put it in PE1, okay? And then you're going to put PE2 next to that, PE3 next to that, PE4 next to that, PE5 next to that. Okay, next you're going to put KE1 because we're going to label knowledge evidence KE. All right, so we've got KE1, KE2, KE3. Next here we're going to put KE, what do you think? KE4. Okay, what do you think we put on this one? KE5. Okay, next one we're going to put here KE6. Okay, let me do that. Okay, here KE7, KE8, okay, then we're going to put KE9, KE10, KE11, KE12, KE13, KE14, and then we're going to put KE15, KE16, 17, KE17, okay. So that now shows us that we have labeled the PEs and the KEs, all right? So now we're going to look at, again, deciding how we're going to assess each item. So, PE1, communicate in a non-discriminatory way with colleagues and customers from at least 3 different social and cultural groups, okay? So probably for that one, I'm probably going to go verbal Q&A and maybe portfolio, okay? Again, there is no right or wrong on this. It's totally fine, whatever you pick. It really is, all right? Some of them are going to lead themselves more so to verbal interview. Some will lead themselves more so to documents. Some will lead themselves more so to third party, okay? So we're going to go through and we're going to decide how we're going to assess it, okay? It doesn't have to be assessed all 3 ways, all right? It's totally fine, all right? So I'm just going to go through and put ticks and crosses, and that is good, okay? So we're going to go through and we're going to, okay, put how we're going to assess it. All right, cool. So hopefully by now you're getting the drift. Okay, so I'm going through and marking how I'm going to assess it. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create some assessment questions for the candidate. Okay, and this is what you would do if you're making an RPL kit. So, name of candidate. Maybe we're going to put Mary Smith, Bob Smith, Tim Smith, whatever the name of the candidate is that you choose from your workplace, okay? Or if you're doing it with a classmate in the face-to-face workshop, that's totally fine as well, okay? So, name of assessor is your first name and last name. Date of assessment is the date that you are creating this and that you conduct it with your candidate. The unit of competency is SITX CON002. Show social and cultural sensitivity. Workplace, put in the name of your workplace. And that will be whatever it is for your current workplace, all right? If you're currently not working, then put the name of your previous workplace, okay? So coming down, now what we're going to do is we're going to start putting in our questions, and we're going to create some questions around it. So question 1, now what we're going to do is we're going to first of all put in our mapping. So where does our mapping come from? It comes from up here. So we have decided, for example, verbal Q&A, the first one that we're going to do verbal interview is 1.1. All right, so you can see 1.1 there. So we're going to put 1.1 in this section here, 1.1, okay? Then we're going to create a question that covers off 1.1, okay? So it says, respect customers and colleagues from different social and cultural groups and treat them with respect and sensitivity, okay? So we've got that, all right. So we're going to make a question that tests that. Okay, so respect customers and colleagues from different social and cultural groups and treat them with respect and sensitivity. All right, okay. So we're going to come down here. Okay, so we're going to create a question around that. So it could be something like, tell me how you show respect to your colleagues and your customers. Or it could be to your colleagues and the parents at the childcare centre, okay? Another way to put it could be, tell me the last time you interacted with a customer from another cultural group and how did you show them respect, Okay, hopefully that makes sense. All right, so we've done 1.1. All right, so that's good. All right, now we're going to come up here. What's the next one that we have ticked as verbal or put a cross against? Well, next one is consider social and cultural differences in all verbal and non-verbal communication. All right, so we've got 1.2 there. So come down. We're going to put 1.2 in here. Okay, and we're going to put maybe something like, tell me 2 ways that you consider social and cultural differences when communicating with people. Okay, and then another question could be, tell me how you consider non-verbal communication when communicating with people from non-English speaking backgrounds. Okay. Another way to ask the question could be, why is it important to consider cultural differences when speaking to people from non-English speaking backgrounds? Okay, so hopefully this is starting to make sense. Okay, next one, question 3. All right, let's come up here. What have we got? All right, we got 1.3. All right, we got that is via verbal. All right, 1.3, respond to others in a non-discriminatory way. We're going to come down here. Okay, so now we want to create a question about responding to others in a non-discriminatory way. So it could be a question like, tell me the last time you spoke to somebody and how did you make sure that you spoke in a non-discriminatory way and you made sure that you were not offensive to another cultural group of individuals, okay? Or it could be, tell me the last time you were speaking to a parent from another culture, how did you make sure that you were not communicating in a discriminatory way, okay? Any kind of question that's going to test this criteria up here, okay? Coming up here, 1.3, okay? Now, not every single item is going to be a verbal Q&A, and that's okay, all right? But we have to show that we are assessing in every single individual item, okay? Now, when you have finished each of the performance criteria, then you're going to move on to the performance evidence and you're going to make sure that you assess those. So, for example, let's say that we did that one, demonstrating attempts to overcome language barriers, okay? So a question could be something like, tell me the last time you had to overcome a language barrier and how did you do it? Okay, that could be a great question. And we would do that via putting in PE2, okay? Now, you are going to be able to put multiple items in one section as well. All right, so we could have PE2 and that maybe covers PC 1.4 as well. All right, now what you need to make sure is that you have 10 questions. All right, and you may have some things that cross-correlate as well. In total, you have to have 10 questions. Okay, then once you've done that, you are going to let me just stop there for a second. Okay, and let me give you some further ideas on some of the knowledge evidence items, okay? So for example, because sometimes people get stuck on some of these. So let's go with, okay, let's go with this one. Let's imagine that we put in verbal Q&A for key cultural and religious protocols of main inbound tourist markers to Australia. Well, a simple question that we could ask for that is, what are some key religious protocols that we need to keep in mind in dealing with people from overseas? Okay, that's a simple question. All right, that's fine one. If we were dealing with something coming down here, diverse social and cultural groups, all right, government agencies, and let's imagine we ticked verbal Q&A on that. So we could say, what could be 2 government agencies that you would access if you needed to deal with groups from other cultural backgrounds, okay? Another one could be, what's an example of a diplomatic service that we could access, okay? Let's see. Let's imagine we put verbal Q&A for this one. Interpreter services. All right. How would you access interpreting services if we had a customer that didn't speak English? All right. Local cultural organisation. What is an example of a local cultural organisation that we could contact for extra support? Okay. Hopefully, these questions that I'm making are making sense for you. Okay. Let's see. I mean, we are giving simple directions. All right. Tell me a time when you had to give simple directions to a customer. All right. That was from a different cultural background. Okay. So what we are doing is we are creating questions, and we are creating 10 questions in total. And anything that we mark against as verbal Q&A, we have to create a question for it. All right. And group it together. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So then what we're going to do is we're going to come down and we're going to make a third-party report, okay? Now, third-party observation report. So this would be imagining that we would give this report to the person's current supervisor in their workplace, and the supervisor is going to tick off that, yes, this person can do these things. So the RTO is going to be Success Training Academy. All right, Success Training Academy in there. Candidate name, again, same person. Assessor name is your first name and last name. Assessment dates, you can put in a 6-month range. That's totally fine. Task procedures observed, you can just list in, for example, showing social and cultural sensitivity to customers and colleagues at childcare centre or at retail environment, whatever it might be. It's going to be dependent on where you work, literally. Okay, so coming down. Okay, now I've got even a couple of examples for you that I've already written in for you. So, did the candidate respect students and customers from different social and cultural backgrounds and treat them with respect and sensitivity? Okay, how did I come up with that? Well, basically, I reworded the criteria up here. Grabbed this criteria, respects customers and colleagues from different social and cultural groups and treat them with respect and sensitivity, okay? So third party there, all right, so I put a cross against it. Now I'm gonna make a statement that the supervisor can sign off against, okay? So coming down, okay. So next one that they've got here is 1.2. Okay, and then I've got considered social and cultural differences in all communication, non-verbal communication when interacting with. So we could put in parents from childcare centre. Okay, if it was maybe they teach an RTO. So with students from various cultural backgrounds in their class. Okay, so we can make it as contextual as we want, all right? If it was a nurse, we could say with patients at the hospital, okay? All right, so now let's go one more. So we got PE1. Candidate has interacted with customers or students from at least 3 different cultural backgrounds, okay? So what we're doing is creating statements that the supervisor can sign off against, if that makes sense, all right? So, all right, we're gonna make how many statements? We're gonna make 8 statements in total, but those 8 statements are going to make sure that they cover off all of the items that we have marked against as third-party report, okay? So, it's going to allow you to actually put multiple items in the kit. So, for example, if we've got, say, KE2 there, and we've got PE4 there. So, coming down here, we can put, we could put KE4 and PE2. Okay, so we can group things together. Okay, so hopefully this is starting to make sense. Ultimately, we are creating a verbal interview and a third-party report that covers off the criteria from the unit, okay? Now, we're going to come through and we're going to make all of those statements, okay? Now, after we've done that, we are then going to come back up. Excuse me while I scroll a little bit. Okay. we're going to come back up to the verbal interview. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to sit down with one of our colleagues or the person that we've nominated, and we're actually going to ask them those questions. So we're going to ask them a question, write down what they say as the answer. Ask the question, write down what they say. Ask the question, write down what they say. And we're going to tick them off as either satisfactory or not yet satisfactory as we go through and do it. Okay, so ask the question, write down what they say. Ask the question, write down what they say. Ask the question, write down what they say. And have a little bit of fun with it. It's not necessarily that the person gets the answer to 100%. That's totally fine if they get a couple wrong. It's not about them passing. It's about you having the experience of conducting the interview. Okay, Now we need to go through and do that. Then we provide some feedback. Good job, well done, or you got these ones wrong or right, whatever it might be. Then we tick them satisfactory or not yet satisfactory. Then you sign it as the assessor. Then they sign it as the candidate. Okay, and then you're going to fill out the third-party report. So RTO, you're going to put in the Success Training Academy. Candidate name, put in their name again. Assessor name, put your first name and last name. Assessment dates, we've already put that in, blah, blah. All right. Now you're going to go through and tick it as if it has been done. So tick yes for each of the items. Okay. And then tick satisfactory and put in some feedback, and then third-party signature, you can get someone else to sign that. That's totally fine. It's a mock situation. Put the date, get them to sign it, put the date, you sign it, put the date. Assess a comment, put in some comments if you want, okay? And that is pretty much it, okay? Just one last thing, just up here with with the verbal interview, where it says additional evidence requested. So here is where you might put the portfolio documents that you would want from the candidate. So you might put in resume, and you might put in reports to parents. If it was the childcare situation, it reports to patients, whatever it might be. Anything that's come about through the verbal interview, you might just make a note of there. Okay, if you don't put in anything, that's fine as well. But just any additional evidence that you would want from the candidate, you would put that in there. Okay, so just to recap, what have we done? Okay, so from the beginning, we have made our assessment plan. All right, we've made sure that we put in some good overarching characteristics of the candidate there. All right, and then we've come down, we've mapped it, we've made sure that we have assessed each item, and every criteria is being assessed in some way, okay? And then we're coming down, creating the verbal interview test, all right? And then creating the third-party report. Then we are using the verbal interview. Ask a question, write down what they say. Ask a question, write down what they say. Ask a question, write down what they say. We are marking their answers as we do that. Okay. Then we're making sure the third-party report is all filled out. Okay. And we have eight statements. We've marked it, satisfactory, no, satisfactory. And we've got the mapping in there, and that is pretty much it, okay? So hopefully that has all made sense. I'm certainly not able to complete the entire task for you and show you exactly, what you would map, because every single person that does this task is going to look at it slightly different, and it's going to be contextualized to the mock candidate that's in front of them, okay? So hopefully that has made sense. If you have any questions at all about how to carry out the task, and if any item hasn't made sense, just let us know, send us an email, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. All right. Thank you so much for watching the webinar, and we wish you the very best of luck with this task, knowing that there is no perfect answer. It is however you create the questions and the statements. Okay, so thanks for watching, and we look forward to helping you out in the future.